Okay, now that I am positive we're recording, I want to thank all of you for joining us today. I'm hoping that you'll have a fantastic time volunteering for the NOSB. I want to make sure that any new volunteers sort of understand all the roles that they can possibly play during the finals competition this April. So that's what we're going to go over today, is basically just the volunteer roles that you can fill. Hopefully by the end of this presentation, you'll find one that you feel fits you best and that you'd like to actually participate as during the finals here in DC next month. My name is Melissa Verdor. I am the program manager for the NOSB, and just about every year for finals, I help manage the volunteer coordination. This year, it's the national office is hosting, so obviously I'm doing all the volunteer work this year. So I thought what we would do is start today with a little bit of a background about the program, just because I know there's a few of you who haven't participated at all, either in the regional or finals, and maybe some people who are brand new to the program. So I thought we would just start with a little background about the NOSB. So the NOSB was created in 1998 in coordination with the International Year of the Ocean. So this competition will be our 22nd finals competition this year that we're celebrating. And the program has 4 main goals. Obviously, we want to develop ocean stewards. We want the students who participate in the program and their coaches and their families to understand that the ocean has an impact on our daily life, no matter where you live, whether you're along the coast or inland. And obviously that there is great importance of scientific research in the ocean realm. We want to foster the use of ocean as an interdisciplinary vehicle to teach science. So as you all probably know, you can have a career related to ocean science that's through biology, chemistry, physics, geology, policy, technology, even art, photography and videography. So we definitely want students to understand that ocean science is disciplinary, and when we work with the coaches, we hope that what they learn, they can take back and sort of interject into their classrooms. Obviously, they can teach ocean science in their biology class or their chemistry class, so we hope that they can do that. We know most schools do not have ocean science coursework as part of their curriculum, but we have heard that some schools, after they participate in NOSB, there's such interest in the program that the schools then do have our coaches teach ocean science courses. We also try to encourage and support the involvement of underrepresented and geographically diverse communities in the ocean sciences. And we also want kids to come out of this program with critical thinking skills and hopefully workforce skills, and then also expose them to the wide breadth of career opportunities that are out there for them related to oceans and ocean sciences. So a little bit about the program structure. So we have the national office, which is here in Washington, D.C., and we pretty much promote and manage all aspects of the NOSB program. We specifically focus on the competition rules for each year, and we do the entire competition question creation process. We provide all the questions for all of our regional and finals competitions. And we also support our 25 regional sites that are across the country. You can see here down the next level. We have 25 regional sites across the U.S. They're hosted mostly by universities, but we also have aquaria and other educational institutions who serve as our hosts. And each of our 25 sites is managed by a regional coordinator, so somebody within that university. Quite often people related to the education programs of the universities or aquaria help manage their local competitions. The main contact that the RCs have is with their volunteers and coaches and students in their region. We have approximately 350 coaches that participate annually, and it may be that they recruit and prepare students for the competition, or it may be that the students really push to have a team to compete, and they find someone within their community, often a teacher or a parent, to serve as that coach. So we have about 2,000 students that participate annually. So we can take a bit of a closer look at the 25 regional sites. So basically, no matter where you live, we can find a regional competition for you to volunteer at. Maybe not if you're in the center of the country, it might be a little bit more difficult, but if you're along the coast, we have pretty good coverage along the coast for our competitions. Here in DC, for example, we have the Chesapeake Bay Bowl, and that's going to cover students from Virginia, Delaware, Maryland, and even parts of Pennsylvania. So each February, each of these 25 regional sites host their regional competition, and then the first place winners of those 25 regional bowls are lucky enough to advance to the NOSB Finals. We like to change the location of finals every year for a few reasons. One is that we do want to highlight our regional competition host sites, especially the universities. A lot of them have great programs or degrees, undergraduate and graduate level, at their universities in marine or ocean science. We definitely want to highlight that. We also really enjoy being able to introduce students to new marine and freshwater environments. There is a field trip component to the finals competition, so the kids will get out in the environment, get wet, get dirty, and get to see the difference between, say, the rocky coast of New England and the barrier reefs of North Carolina. So that's something we really like to highlight. And then by changing our finals location each year, we also get to highlight a yearly competition theme. So for 2019, we're focusing on ocean observing as our theme. So observe the ocean, secure the future. We figured this would be a really good theme to focus on in DC simply because many of our federal sponsors have a mission towards ocean science and especially are involved in ocean observing. So basically, the kids are going to hear about the topic of ocean observing in a few different ways. It's going to be in their competition questions that they get asked. During their field trips, they may be meeting people who do this as part of their career. During the career mentor event that we hold, they'll meet people who work in ocean observing. And then through the presenters and other activities that we have throughout the weekend for them. So through all these things, they're going to learn how ocean observing addresses societal needs, learning about the technology that's needed in order to take those measurements. And then really one of the big things is the challenge with once you have all this data, what do you do with it? Processing, analyzing, and coordinating it can be really difficult given the amounts of collected data and the size of those data sets. Obviously, through the participation of the career event and some of our sponsors and presenters, they'll learn, how these observations can influence and inform decision makers. They'll learn which organizations are focused on ocean observing. And then I'll get to our science expert briefing in a few minutes. We'll also learn a little bit about policy that's related to ocean observing. So once the regional winners come to finals, what happens? So I'm going to give a little bit of a overview of the actual competition, the kids that participate, sort of what happens during the competition before we get into the volunteer roles. And again, if anyone has any questions at any time, please feel free to stop me and ask or type into the chat box if you have a question. So at both the regional and finals level, the way the teams are formatted, teams consist of 5 students. So they'll have 4 competitors who are competing at a time. They have 1 alternate that they can swap in at certain points during the competition, and obviously they have their coach. So when we invite them to finals, we have teams of 6, the 5 students and their coach. So for finals this year, we have 24 teams coming. One of our Texas Bowls did not take place this year, so we have 24 teams coming, which means that they're just going to be placed randomly into round-robin competitions, and during those round robins, they'll compete against 4 other teams. And then after the round robins, we determine the top 16 teams, and they get to move on to the double elimination round, which, as you can probably understand, they have to be eliminated twice in order to be knocked out of the competition, or they have to be beat twice. During the rounds, NOSB has 3 types of questions that the students are asked. They have the toss-up and bonus questions. These are read aloud to the students. We use something called the EOSB, or the Electronic Ocean Science Bowl, which is a Java application, and that pulls all the questions into the rounds needed for the competition. It's on a computer, saves us from having to print huge books of questions for the moderators to read out loud. And during the competition, all teams are going to hear the same questions concurrently based on the round number. The toss-up questions are always multiple choice, and they are answered by one individual. It's whichever student on either team buzzes in to answer the question. If the individual gets the toss-up question correct, they're rewarded with a bonus question. Our bonus questions are always short answer, and during the short answer bonus questions, teams can confer about how they want to answer, but the captain has to provide the answer. If the toss-up question is answered incorrectly, the team doesn't get the option to answer the bonus question. The other type of questions included in the NOSB are what we call our team challenge questions. These are worksheets that may have images, data, graphs, or questions, and they're really formulated to test the students' problem-solving and teamwork skills. They have 2 to 5 minutes to complete each of the questions, and they can work as a team to answer them. But again, only the team captain's answer sheet that's handed in will be the one graded. I'll note, if you're new to the program, the competition questions have been reviewed multiple times by the time we get to the competitions themselves. And part of this is to make your jobs a lot easier in certain roles. We do our best to provide guidance on all acceptable answers, and also provide guidance in some cases on what would not be an acceptable answer. So for the toss-up and bonus questions that you're dealing with in the competition rooms, we really try to make it so there's no confusion about whether a student got a question correct or incorrect. That's not to say that there, I'll get to it in a minute, there can be challenges. They may come up with a good solution as to why an answer that's not on the sheet could also be correct. Like I said, for the most part, we try to do everything we can to make the determination of whether they've answered it correct or not as easy as possible. So what happens in each round? Well, each round, we budget 45 minutes for each round. And during that time, there's going to be 2 of these team challenge questions, or TCQs, 2 buzzer segments, and a break. So for finals this year, we're doing things a little bit differently. We're going to start with our 2 team challenge questions. We're then going to move into a 6-minute buzzer segment. The students will then get a 2-minute break, and then they will have another 6-minute buzzer segment. So starting each round, obviously we'll have the 2 team challenge questions, and as I said, the teams are allowed to work on those together. And they work on them one right after another. So the first one gets handed out, they have 2 to 5 minutes to finish it. They hand in their answer sheets, they get the second team challenge question, have 2 to 5 minutes to work on that, and hand that in as well. The TCQs are not dealt with in your competition rooms. The TCQ answer sheets will be taken out to our grading room, where another bunch of wonderful volunteers will be sitting there and grading each of the TCQs from all the rooms. So once the TCQs are done and out of the room, the teams will move on to their first buzzer segment. Each buzzer segment lasts 6 minutes, or until they run through the first 10 pairs of questions. And just so you know, this changes round by round, depending on how quickly the moderator reads, how often teams buzz in, if questions are offered to the other team, if there are any challenges. Just so you know, no 2 rounds are alike, and that's totally fine, that's expected. Just know that in one buzzer segment, you only may make it through 6 questions, and the next one you might make it through all of them. It's just normal. Buzzer segment is when the teams are going to be asked these toss-up and bonus questions. Obviously, students buzz in. If you haven't seen the competition, they have a little handheld buzzer, sort of like you see on Jeopardy, and they're going to buzz in. Like I said, they get the toss-up correct, they get the bonus question. So the big thing to remember during the multiple choice toss-ups is that no conferring is allowed. Whichever student buzzes in is going to be recognized by the moderator, which we'll get to in a minute, and that is the only student that can answer the question. If they get that multiple choice question correct and they can get the bonus question, like I said, the team can confer, but the captain must provide the answer. If any other team member answers, even if it's a correct answer, they don't receive any points. When the 6 minutes is up, the teams will get their 2-minute break. During this break, the science judge will go over the answers to the team challenge questions that they worked on earlier, and their TCQ scores will come back from the grading room. After that 2-minute break, and the break may take slightly longer if it's taking longer for the TCQs to be graded, especially in the early rounds of the morning. As you can imagine, when there's 10 competition rooms all going at once, the TCQ grading get a little backed up. But we're hoping with this structure this year, that won't take place by doing the TCQs first. They'll have all that time to work them out and get them back to the room. So after that 2-minute break, the second 6-minute buzzer segment will begin, and the room's going to pick up with the question after the last one they read during the first buzzer segment. So if a room ended on question 6 during the first buzzer segment, during the second buzzer segment, they're going to start on question 7. This way, the teams have the opportunity to hear and answer all the questions in the round. Like I said, it depends on how fast they go through the questions, but at least they have the opportunity to hear all the questions possible. Once that second buzzer segment is over, your round is over. The team will be told their final scores. The 2 team captains will come up and sign the official score sheets that go over to Ocean Bowl Central, which is where we do all the scoring. And then they will move on to their next round. So during the room assignments in the morning during the round robins, we do stagger the room assignments. So for the most part, you will see different teams each round during the round robin. Okay, so I had mentioned the science expert briefing a little bit earlier. This is something that we do solely at the finals competition. This doesn't take place at the regional competition. If you're volunteering in the main competition rooms, this is something that you don't necessarily need to worry about. Just know that it is taking place concurrently with the round robins. We manage the SEB separately from the traditional volunteer training. We have 6 judges that we bring in to work on this. And these, like I said, these 2 rooms are going to be going during the round robins, and the students will simply present to a panel of judges. So the science expert briefing, what is it? We started it in 2011. Initially, it was called the policy briefing. And then we realized we really needed to explain to the students that they were looking at the scientific requirements to inform sound policy. So it's now called the science expert briefing, and we focus more on what scientific input is needed if Congress is looking at a certain piece of policy. So the students work on this for a while, for a few weeks prior to coming to finals, and they have to submit a written report to us prior. And basically, they have to assume the roles of different stakeholders. Each team member serves as a different stakeholder, whether it's federal, state, NGO, academia, or industry. And they come up with their recommendations based on their stakeholder roles with that piece of policy, and then they also come up with a final consensus based on all of their input. That gets submitted to us and goes through a grading process, and then during the finals competition, they will go into the room with the judges, and they will get a series of questions from them. Each team will get the same questions, and the judges will listen to them and grade the oral component as well. So if this is something that you are interested in, this is an opportunity to volunteer in these rooms. If you have a strong interest in marine policy, you know, we do need 2 timekeepers. So you could serve in that room as a timekeeper and sort of listen to what the students are coming up with as part of their individual stakeholder requirements for this piece of policy. So if that's something you're interested, let me know. It's not a difficult role. We can teach you the timing aspect of it pretty quickly, but you would get to be in the room listening to a more policy-related component of the day. Okay, before I move on to the volunteer roles, does anyone have any questions about sort of the structure of each competition round? Okay, so now we'll get into the roles that you can fill while at the 2019 finals. So we have a couple different types of volunteers that we need to make sure that the day runs smoothly. When we talk about competition officials, these are usually the people who are in the room during the competition. And there's 7 of you in the room at a time to make sure that each round runs smoothly. So the room officials include moderator, science judge, rules judge, scorekeeper, timekeeper, and then we typically like to have 2 room runners per room. We can also offer the role of a TCQ grader, but you won't be in the competition rooms. You'll be in your own room off to the side. So one of the things to consider is, do you want to be in a competition room and see the competitions happening? Or if you're a bit more quiet and you want to be hanging out with adults all day, we can put you as a TCQ grader. Like I said, you'll be in your sort of own separate room. So I'll note that when we form the room assignments, which after our in-person training, I'll try to put everybody in their preferred role and send out the assignments for people to review. But when we come up with the room assignments, please do know that we really do our best to ensure that every room has at least 1 or 2 experienced volunteers that can guide any new volunteers. So this year we do have a lot of past volunteers who are going to come and join us. We also have our regional coordinators at the event, and they volunteer in the rooms as well. So if you are brand new, don't worry, there will be people in the room to help guide you if you still have any questions or you get flustered. As we go through the roles, I'll note that we typically want experienced moderators and science judges in each room, and that's simply due to the fact that those 2 roles truly need to understand the rules and sort of the flow of the game. Since today I'm talking to mostly new volunteers, I'll explain all those roles, but I'll focus most on the roles that don't require as much experience with the competitions. But that is to say, if you are interested in serving as a moderator or rules judge, just let me know, and we can schedule time to go over those roles in more detail with you and allow you to practice, because that's really, especially for moderators, practicing is key. And for rules judge, obviously, it's just, there's a lot of rules to the competition, so sort of understanding them. I'll also note that in each of the volunteer rooms, we really hope that you will use your individual and collective experience and backgrounds, both in science and the program, and work together. So we do our best to keep the volunteer teams together in each room for the entire day, because we know that you can become comfortable working with one another as a team. As you're setting up the room, you can discuss who has different backgrounds, geology, biology, etc., and you can use that collective knowledge if any issues should arise in the room. So please know that we try to do that as much as possible to make the day as easy and as comfortable for the volunteers as possible. We also do need a handful of general volunteers. So one is, we have Ocean Bowl Central. That is sort of the hub of the day where everything's happening. It's where the scores come after each round, and we keep track of how the teams are doing. We'll keep track of any issues that come in from rooms, which I'll get to in a little bit. It's where we hand out the TCQs, and we just deal with some of the logistics of the day. So again, if you're in Ocean Bowl Central, you won't be seeing the competitions take place, but given some people like to be sort of more behind the scenes, especially if there's anyone who has mobility issues, Ocean Bowl Central can be a really great place for you to still volunteer and help out, because you can just stay in there all day. And then in terms of just general and logistics, in the morning, getting volunteers getting them their T-shirts and their rooms assignments, we could use help with that. If anyone's interested in setting up lunch or activities. And then as the competition rooms, throughout the day, as we move on into double elimination, we need fewer and fewer rooms. If people are available to stick around and help us break down those rooms, that's great. And then if anyone's available to stay through like the very end of the day, obviously packing up and transporting materials is something that we could always, use more help, more backs to help us get the stuff in and out of the building. Okay, now we can get into the officials that are in the actual competition room. So our moderator is the individual who really runs the show in each room. As I said, this usually isn't the best role for a brand new volunteer to jump into. He or she who serves as moderator is responsible for reading all the questions out loud to the teams, which seems easy, but obviously, like I said, you need to practice and sort of find your flow. They have to verbally recognize a team member once they buzz into the question. They announce whether the question is correct, and then move on to the next question. They confer with the science judge to make sure that the answers are correct. And they obviously have to be very familiar with the rules of the game and the questions in each round and the general flow of the round. So the moderators are really people who are running each room, and they're sort of keeping an eye on the questions and obviously paying attention to the rules of the game in conjunction with the rules judge, checking the answers of the students along with the science judge. So again, if it's something that you're interested in, definitely speak to me. We can work with you to sort of get you the training you need. Really, it's about practice, 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 and becoming comfortable with the OSB, the system we use during the competitions, and the questions themselves. As you can imagine, talking all day and reading questions can seem a little taxing. Some people love it and they're great at it. Other people don't enjoy it because they don't sort of like being that center of attention with all eyes on them. So, and I will note too with moderators, there's a little bit of prep work needed for moderators, obviously. They receive the questions in the OSB prior to the event, like I said, so they can practice them and review them. And just as they're going through them, sometimes they'll also find if there's any last-minute edits or errors made. The goal for a moderator is to read loudly, clearly, not too fast, not too slow. And like I said, it often takes moderators a few competitions to find their groove and comfort in that role. Moderators, too, if you're interested in being one, we typically ask them to bring their own personal laptops to finals so that they're comfortable with the setup. The USB is just a jar file, so it's easy to open on any computer. That's one of the roles, additional roles of the moderator, is to bring their laptop. So one of the things that's really important about being the moderator is you're reading the questions aloud, but you're also sending signals to the students, to the rules judge, and to the scorekeeper as you're announcing whether or not the students have buzzed in and have been recognized or not. So there are a few types of responses that students can provide as they're competing. So once a question is read by the moderator, the students basically can respond in 3 ways. When the toss-up question is asked, as we mentioned, one team member will buzz in. The rules do not allow the first person to simply buzz in and blurt out the answer. We really want the moderator to verbally recognize the student by saying, Team A, player 3, or Team B, captain. And just so you know, in the room, students will have little placards in front of them so that you know if they're, Team A, Team B, or the captain or not. So basically, once the student has been verbally recognized by the moderator, they can answer the question. So this is sort of what we're talking about. If they wait to be recognized by the moderator before answering, that's sort of their best bet, which I'll get to in a minute. They can interrupt the reading of a question and be recognized and then answer. Or if they just, as it sounds, if they blurt out the answer before being recognized, we call that a blurt. So many teams will wait for the entire question, toss-up question, to be read, and that includes all 4 multiple choice answers before buzzing in. However, at finals, we have very experienced teams. They may know the answer right away, just starting to hear the beginning of the question, or they may want to guess just in an attempt to score points. So they will often buzz in before the question is completely read. That's why we call that an interrupt. So if the moderator does not get through the entire question and all four, W, X, Y, Z choices that the students can answer with, we call it an interrupt. They are allowed to do that as part of the game. Like I said, it's kind of part of the gamesmanship of it, of whether they think they really know an answer and can gain some extra points. But they still have to be verbally recognized by the moderator before answering that question. Anytime a student provides an answer before being verbally recognized, then we would call it a blurt. As you can imagine, this probably happens most during the early rounds as students are nervous, getting excited to answer, becoming comfortable with the buzzer system. So the moderator will announce if a student who's buzzed in has either interrupted or blurted. We'll get to it in a minute because that plays into the scoring matrix. That's what I'm saying. The moderator is sort of in charge of the whole room, and by working on these interrupts and blurts and announcing them, then the rules judge knows to sort of pay attention to what happens next, and it helps the scorekeeper know how the scoring is going to work, which, like I said, we'll get into shortly. Are there any questions on this? This is sort of one of the most important parts of the game in terms of the scoring. So again, waiting for the entire question to be read, that's considered recognized. If they interrupt the reading of the question, that's an interrupt. And obviously, if they are not verbally recognized by the moderator at all, that's considered a blurt. Okay, science judges. The name basically says it all. The science judge is going to use their scientific knowledge to deem whether a student who's buzzed in has provided a correct answer or not. So they're going to ensure all questions are read correctly and confer with the moderator to determine whether an answer given is acceptable. They also control the buzzer system. So each time a student buzzes in, once the question is out of play, they'll have to clear the system. It's just a little red button that they press. But by resetting it, now it's back to working order that either team can buzz in. Basically, the systems are called lockout systems. Once the team has buzzed in to answer a question, the other team can't. So that's why the science judge has to make sure that they clear the system in preparation for the next question. The science judge will also ensure that our team challenge questions are projected. So once the students begin working on those worksheets, we provide versions that can be projected in the room. This way, the audience members can see exactly what the teams are working on. As you can imagine, seeing 4 students bent over a desk working on a worksheet is not too engaging for the audience. So we try to project all the TCQ questions the students are working on so that the audience will sort of play along. Another important job of the science judge is to respond to any science challenges made by the students. It's really important to note that only the students competing, so the 4 students on each of the 2 teams, the 8 students total, they are the only ones allowed to challenge a scientific answer. The coaches and the alternates sitting in the back of the room and the audience members are not allowed. And the students must make these challenges before the next question is read aloud and in play. And I'll note that we have told all the students, they're told to politely raise their hands and voice that they have a challenge. They may get a little heated at times just because they're really looking for those points. Don't let that fluster you and don't let that bother you. That's just part of the game. But they are told to try to be as polite as possible. So basically, a challenge occurs when a student disagrees with the ruling of the moderator and the science judge. So they may think that they have an answer that is totally acceptable. They're going to have to explain to you why they're making that challenge and why they think that their answer should be considered acceptable. So the biggest thing with this is you stop the clock. So when we get to the timekeeper, we always say if there's any issues in the room, just stop the clock. And then the science judge and moderator can confer and make a decision about whether or not they want to accept that answer. like I said, this is also where the science judge should feel comfortable using the collective background of all the officials in the room. So if the students make a challenge about a geology question and the scorekeeper is a geologist, feel free to confer with them as well, or anyone else, even the runners in the room, especially if the science judge and moderator are unsure of the topic. So when you say, yes, we'll accept that, the students are thrilled. If you say, no, we won't accept that answer, just know that they can ask for that challenge to now be sent out of the room to the officials in the grading room. That is allowed. Again, like I said, don't let it fluster you. Sometimes they are simply trying to run the clock. When you think about all the things kids can do during the competition to ensure they either get points or keep the other team from scoring points, you understand sort of their gamesmanship during the rounds. So if they ask for that challenge to go out of the room, it'll go down to the runner or the science judge, depending on how comfortable they are with the topic, and run it down to the grading room. Once the answer comes back from that grading room, it's absolutely final. The kids cannot challenge it again. The science judge is also responsible for passing out the TCQs to the students and collecting them when the teams are finished. And then, like I said, once the TCQs have been graded and you have that 2-minute break, the science judge will go through the TCQs and explain the answers. Again, you can just show the TCQ answers and let the students read them. If it's a topic you understand and they have questions, feel free to explain it in more detail. Or, again, if the scorekeeper is a geologist and can help answer questions about a TCQ, go for it. I'll note that during the buzzer segment, when the kids are buzzing in and answering the toss-up and bonus questions, we try to keep the questions as short as possible. It's not really a time to provide a learning lesson. We just need to keep moving. They want to keep moving because they want to hear as many questions as possible in order to get as many points as possible. So during the buzzer segments, there's not really a whole lot, there's really no time to explain the answers to those questions. You give them the answer, but you can't really explain it. But during the TCQs, during that break, you can project the TCQ answers. And like I said, at least let them read it or go through it with them. So for science judge, obviously individuals with a strong science background can fill this role. So again, if this is something that you're interested in, this role is not as difficult as the moderator for a newbie, but we will also send you the EOSB prior to the event. As a science judge, we would hope that you would go through the questions to ensure that they're scientifically correct and don't need any last-minute corrections. Any questions about moderator or rules judge? Or sorry, moderator or science judge. We're going to move on to the rules judge. Again, the only reason I say that this might be a difficult role for new volunteers is we do have a very extensive list of competition rules. And you sort of need to know the rules and how they affect play in the game and how rules sort of merge together. So, and what to watch out for during each round. So again, if this is something you're interested in, just let me know, and we can give you a copy of the rules. There will be a copy of the rules in every competition room during finals, just in case there are any last-minute questions about anything. But if you want to be a rules judge, like I said, we can talk offline. So basically, the rules judge stands in front of the room and ensures all the officials are performing their roles correctly. Again, sort of watching the flow of the game. They're going to pay attention to the scorekeeper to make sure that the point allocation is correct. They're going to keep an eye on the timekeeper, making sure time is being called at appropriate times, making sure that if the clock needs to be stopped because of a challenge, it's stopped. And they're also going to make sure that the teams are not conferring at times when they're not allowed to. So again, no conferring during the toss-up questions, conferring allowed during bonus questions and TCQs. One of the biggest thing with the rules judge, really, everyone gets really nervous about being a rules judge because they're like, well, I don't understand the competition rules. I will say that probably 90% of what the rules judge really does during each round is watch that the audience is behaving. So you're going to watch to make sure that nobody is signaling any answers. We don't really have a problem with cheating, but obviously just something to keep an eye out for. And really these days, the rules judge is spending most of their time reminding audience members to keep their cell phones stashed away because they're not allowed to have them out during the competition. Make sure they don't have any reading or writing materials out. They're allowed to have the event program, but that's it. And obviously just to keep quiet during the round. So that will be 90% of your job, is just keeping an eye on the audience and making sure that they're behaving properly. Okay, scorekeeper. Obviously a really important job during each round. And, somebody who can think fast on their feet and be able to add quickly is perfect for this role. Don't worry, though. I often say the scorekeeper is the most watched person in the room. You're not really the most watched person. They're looking past you at the score sheet. The teams are going to keep an eye on the score throughout the entire round, like I said, so they can determine whether or not they want to take a chance and buzz in and interrupt or not. And so you'll be looked at a lot, or you'll feel like you're being looked at a lot. And if you're worried about making a math mistake, don't. Everyone in the room will let you know if something's wrong. The students, and like I said, the rules judge will be keeping an eye on you as well. And they'll just ask to stop the clock and ask you to fix the score. It's totally fine. Don't get too worried about that. So here we can actually look at how are they getting points as they answer questions correctly or incorrectly. So the toss-up questions are worth 4 points, and the bonus questions are worth 6 points. So if a team answers the toss-up correctly and gets the bonus correct as well, they can earn up to 10 points for each pair of questions. The TCQs, like I said, which go out of the room to be graded, are worth up to 20 points each. The bonus questions are obviously pretty easy to score. If they get the answer correct, they receive 6 points. If not, they get 0. And like I said, the scores for the team challenge questions will come back to you, and you'll just add them in at the appropriate time. It's really the toss-up questions where the scorekeeper needs to pay attention to the moderator. They're just a little bit trickier because the scoring depends on the type of response received by the student. So the scorekeeper is going to listen to the moderator, particularly paying attention for calls of interrupts and blurts. So next slide, we can show you this little matrix that we use. Each room is going to have a copy of this matrix in it to assist the new scorekeepers. It sort of helps when you hear the moderator, say either interrupt or blurt, you can look at this quickly and know whether or not you're going to assign points or not. So this is a really good time to explain what I meant by being recognized. If a question was read in its entirety, a student buzzed in and is verbally recognized by the moderator, meaning they've said, Team A captain. If they get that question correct, they get the 4 points. If they get it wrong, they simply get 0 points. So basically, waiting for a question to be completely read before buzzing in and answering just means that there's less risk for that team when they answer. If students want to interrupt the reading of a question, and that means up until the last syllable of the last possible answer, they still have to be verbally recognized, but that's going to be called an interrupt. That's why I have the example question up there. So if the moderator got through everything, which commercial fishing method uses multiple baited hooks suspended beneath the ocean surface? W, trolling. X, trawling. Y, seining. Z, longlining. If a team buzzes in after he says longlining, that's, they're being recognized. If they get it correct, they get 4 points. If they get it incorrect, 0. Interrupting. If the moderator only gets through Z, long, or even Z, long line, but doesn't get that last syllable of ing in longlining, that would be considered an interrupt. So the students might interrupt 3 words into the question, or they might wait down to, like I said, that last syllable of the possible Z answer. If they interrupt, they can do that. That's allowed. but there's a penalty for interrupting. So if they're lucky and they get the question correct, they do get those 4 points. However, if they get the question wrong, they lose 4 points. And then that question goes to the other team. So not only have they lost points, they've now potentially given the other team the opportunity to gain points. So interrupting, if they think they're correct, it's a great way to get extra points because then they would get that bonus question for another 6, but it is risky. So it's interesting to watch the very ends of games or the rounds to see if they're just trying to get a few extra points, how often they try to use the interrupt. As I've said, teams at finals will probably interrupt more just because they're more experienced, and they obviously won their regional rounds, so they have a bit more confidence in themselves. And then lastly, if a student interrupts the reading of the question and is not verbally recognized, they don't wait for the moderator to recognize them, they just blurt out the answer. Again, that's going to be considered a blurt, and no points are given or taken away. So again, if the student gets the question wrong or blurts, the question goes to the other team, allowing them the opportunity to answer, and then all these same rules apply to that team. Any questions about the scoring? If you're a new scorekeeper, don't worry. The first round, it might seem, and we're going to, at the in-person training, we will practice with everybody in their preferred roles, so you'll get a chance to practice this. But like I said, we will have this matrix in every room, and after a few questions, it sort of becomes second nature. Like I said, you listen for the moderator, and then you sort of know how to proceed with your scoring. Okay, Timekeeper. The Timekeeper, really, this is the one where I'm like, you have to be you have to be on and at attention at all times. Timekeepers really can't get caught up in sort of the drama of the competition because you're going to be paying very close attention to 2 clocks. So there's the game clock, which is, you can see the big clock in this photo that's facing out, so that the teams can sort of see, the progression of how long they have left in each round. And then you also have a stopwatch, which you're working with. So the game clock determines, the 6 minutes for each buzzer segment. And you also use them for the TCQ, setting them for either 2 to 5 minutes, depending on the TCQ question. And then the stopwatch is really to time the intervals of when the competitors start their answer. So for toss-up questions, the teams have 5 seconds to buzz in to answer the questions, and then 3 seconds from being recognized to answer. So you'll be keeping track of that. And then for bonus questions, the teams have 20 seconds to answer the question once it has been read. Like I said, the Timekeeper, one of the big things is obviously keeping track of the time, both on your big clock and your stopwatch, but you're also going to be having your ears open to hear whether the science judge, the moderator, the rules judge, or a team member is requesting that the game clock be stopped, so the big clock. This is not an issue. This could be because a team has a challenge. Something could have gone wrong with the buzzer system. The moderator may have read a question incorrectly. The scorekeeper may have made an error. Biggest thing with timekeeping is if there seems like there's going to be an issue, stop the clock, wait till that issue is resolved, and then restart it. So no matter what, if an issue arises, you don't panic. You just stop the clock, figure everything out, and start it again. And the last of the competition room officials are the room runners. And in some cases, the room runners do run. So they're basically running back and forth. They take the TCQs to the grading room. They then bring those TCQ scores back to the competition room. They run up to Ocean Bowl Central between rounds to pick up the new TCQs and to drop off their score sheets. And then just in general, they're there to answer any room needs. So if there's a battery is needed for the clock or extra pencils for the students to do the TCQs, or one of the buzzer system lights goes out, they'll be the person that runs up to Ocean Bowl Central and says, hey, we need some help. Finals this year, the rooms are pretty contained within one building, and they're going to be pretty close to one another. So you won't necessarily have to be running the entire time. But I will note that there is going to be a flight of stairs involved because we're going to be on 2 floors. So the grading room was going to be on the first floor, and Ocean Bowl Central will be on the second. So you will be going up and down steps quite a bit during the day. A lot of the runners find it fun to wear their activity trackers, like their Fitbits, to see how many steps they got in during the day and how many flights of stairs they actually did run up and down. Like I said, the room runners primarily run the TCQs to the judges' appeal room to be scored, and then back into the room so that the science judge can announce the scores. In between rounds, they'll run and get the new team challenge questions for the next round. They'll drop off the scores from the previous round. And just while the room runners aren't running, so for the most of the competition rounds, you'll just be sitting in the back of the room waiting for your chance to go run those questions. We do ask that, the room runners just sort of keep an eye on everything that's going on in the competition rooms. Keep an eye on the teams, report anything weird or suspicious or any, good or bad behavior. Since you don't really have to focus on much during the actual round, the room runners sometimes see more than the other competition officials who are really focused on each of their roles. So, and then I will say one of the other things the room runner will do, we often have, hard candies and things like that in Ocean Bowl Central that you can take back to your other officials in your room and sort of become, the most beloved person because you brought them candy and potentially coffee if they ask for it. Okay. Lastly, the TCQ Graders. Like I said, this will be done outside of the competition room, so you'll be in a room with hopefully 5 to 6 other people who have a variety of scientific backgrounds represented. And so you will, like I said, if you want to be a TCQ grader, that's great. Definitely let me know. Just know that you don't actually get to see the competitions take place. So while you're in that room, you're going to grade the TCQs. Like I said, they're worth 20 points. Again, sort of like with the buzzer questions, we really do our best job to provide you with an answer sheet that's going to spell out all the possible correct answers as well as any answers that should not be accepted. Again, these have gone through a couple extensive reviews. We really do our best to make the grading as easy as possible, especially in the early rounds. So the first couple of rounds, the TCQs tend to be a bit easier. They may be matching or fill in the blank or something like that, simply because there are 10 competition rooms going at the same time, and the TCQ graders will then have quite a few sheets to grade. So again, but since you have a very good scientific background collective in that room, a lot of times, the TCQ graders will work together to deem whether or not an answer that we may not have provided should be considered correct or not. So the students don't actually get to see the graded TCQs. They're only going to be informed of their scores, and they can't challenge the TCQs. So also, while you're in that room, you may be asked to rule on one of those science challenges I mentioned. If the challenge isn't resolved in the competition room by the competition room officials, like I said, the students are allowed to ask that challenge be sent to the graders for a final appeal. Whatever ruling you come up with in the grading room is final, and no other challenges are allowed. We do make sure that the judges have access to internet while they're in that room, so that they can access information easily to either make sure that the ruling on a science challenge is correct, or to assist with the TCQ grading if something strange arises. I'll note this is a role where you're very busy for a short period of time, and then you have some downtime. So as you can imagine, with each round, you're going to have a few minutes before the TCQs come to you, and then you're going to be very busy for a handful of minutes grading those TCQs and getting them back to the rooms, and then you have some downtime. So just know that it's sort of like feast or famine while you're a TCQ grader. And I'd like to note that our one regional coordinator, Dennis Hanasak from Florida, he always serves as a TCQ grader. That's his favorite role ever. And he's really great at organizing the graders. So if this is your first time ever being a TCQ grader, I would say don't worry. Dennis will show you the ropes. And the best thing about Dennis is he is so super excited when a science challenge comes into the room. He almost dances around like a little kid. So it can be a really fun room working with Dennis and the other TCQ graders. Okay, any questions on the roles? We're almost at the end of our hour, so I was just going to go over a little bit of the schedule and some next steps. So if you have any questions about any of the volunteer roles, let me know. Also, please know that you can always email me up until the day of finals if you have questions. And like I said, at the in-person training, we'll go through each of these roles in a bit more in detail and get you to practice so that you're totally comfortable. So like I said, my hope after this webinar today is that you'll figure out which one of these roles you feel fits you best. And at that in-person training, you can let me know, if there's one role you want to fill, or if you have 2 or 3 that you're comfortable, we're going to ask you to rank them, first through third. Okay, so just we'll go over in the in-person volunteer training the day of in a bit more extensive manner. But I just wanted to go through the volunteer schedule quickly with you guys, just so you know. This year is slightly different for us. We need all volunteers to arrive at the Keck Center by 8 a.m. Typically, we can get into our venue the night before and set up all the competition rooms. We simply can't do that with the Keck Center because they have so many other events going on. So between 8 and 8:50 Saturday morning, the regional coordinators and the volunteers in each room are going to have to set up their competition rooms. So that is one thing that we will do in the in-person training. We will go through like how you actually set up the buzzer system. It's not difficult. We have some diagrams. And like I said, each room will have, a regional coordinator and or a few experienced volunteers who have done this quite a few times. So we're confident that you can get into the room and get it set up in time. It's just something that we have to do, unfortunately, the morning of. We're going to start the rounds at 9. And like I said, between 9 and 11:15, the round robins and the SEB rooms are going to be running concurrently. Depending on what room you're in, SEB rooms do have to work a little bit through lunch. But you guys get to have lunch between 11:15 and 12:30. And then from 12:30 to 2, you're back in for the final round robin competitions. After the round robins, the national staff and our Uber scorer need some time to actually go through the scores and determine which teams are going to move on. So about 2:10 to 2:40, during that scoring break, we will have a presentation. And it's going to be somebody who works with the Ocean Observatories Initiative, presenting on, obviously, ocean observing theme. So you're more than welcome to go watch that. You can take a little break if you need to, go outside, get some fresh air, up to you. 2:45, we need everyone back in the rooms for double eliminations. And this year, we're really doing our best to stay on schedule because we need to have all the competition rooms done at 6 p.m. So during the double eliminations, when I send you out the volunteer schedule, you'll see as the teams move through double eliminations, we need fewer and fewer competition rooms. So when you come for the in-person training, or you can send me an email, ideally we'd love to have all volunteers there from 8 to 6 for the entire day, just in case we have any issues and need to throw you in another room. But if you do have, scheduling conflicts or you need to leave early, like I said, competition rooms will be sort of pulled out. We'll need fewer and fewer volunteers as we go through the day. Just talk to me, let me know, and we can work out a schedule around a time that you're either available or need to leave. So it is a long day, which is why we truly appreciate that you want to be part of this. It can be tiring, but like I said, everyone who volunteers always says they have a great time, and I think one of the big testaments to the program is that we've had so many volunteers who have been involved, more than 10, 15 years in the 22-year history of this program. So I'm confident that you'll have a fun day. You'll just be very tired at the end. But I always say, remember, the students are the ones actually competing and truly using their brain power, so you can just imagine how exhausted they are. Sunday, if you're available Sunday, we typically don't need as many volunteers on Sunday because we do have all our regional coordinators in attendance, and we can run 2 competition rooms with just them. If you can't make Saturday but you want to do Sunday, simply let me know. Or if you're around Sunday, you can come. This is open to the public. If you want to see the last rounds, which are really exciting to see who's going to come in third through first, please, you're more than welcome to come attend. And the award ceremony as well can sometimes be fun to watch which teams have won which prizes. So for Sunday, we're going to start at 8 a.m. again. We'll have a brief meeting, and then at 8:30, we'll get right into the competition rounds. And so typically, we would know by 11:45 at the end of round 8 who our champion is. But if they haven't been eliminated twice, or if a team hasn't been eliminated twice, we have to go into round 9. And that's often where it becomes very nail-biting, intense, and very exciting. Like I said, if you can attend, please do so. Okay, so what's next? Let's see. I'm going to send an email tomorrow to everyone with the recording of this webinar. Obviously, you participated live, but if you know anyone who wasn't able to, we'll make sure that they can watch it and learn about the roles. I will also be sending along some of our job description one-pagers. It just gives a little bit more information about the different roles. And we have these one-pagers, and they will be in each of the competition rooms to sort of help you. So the timekeeper can have a timekeeper's one-pager in front of them during the competition to remind them of the timing of both the large clock and the stopwatch. Same thing with the scorekeeper. We'll make sure you have that matrix. So I'm going to send those along. Feel free to read through them if you need some additional information or are trying to decide what role. And then attend one of our in-person trainings next week. Tuesday and Thursday, they'll be from 6 to 7:30 p.m. and then Saturday, 1 o'clock to 2:30 in the afternoon here at the Ocean Leadership offices. It'll be a time we'll go through some more details about the actual finals competition schedule. And then, like I said, we'll show you how to set up the buzzer system and then practice so that you can practice in your role. I will say the 19th is a very popular day, so that's going to be, it should be a fun training with everybody. Everyone will be able to get to practice being a competitor and probably practice in their volunteer role. And then obviously, like I said, I am here if you have any questions. We want to make sure you're totally ready for competition day. So feel free to email me or call with any questions you have. Okay, someone asked if there is parking available for training. Yes, there's parking around the office. I would suggest trying to find on-street parking. That's typically 2 hours, which is what you should hopefully only need for the training. There are a couple garages right behind or adjacent to our building on I Street. If you turn down 12th onto I, there's 2 different parking garages. I got to say I'm not 100% sure of the price of parking there, simply because I don't do it. But I will try to find that out and send that in an email. Let's see. Any questions whatsoever? I don't want to keep you too much past an hour since I know you're all very busy. But if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Okay. Well, I want to thank all of you profusely for coming and participating in this webinar. It means a lot to us that you're volunteering. The NOSB program is only successful because we have so many dedicated volunteers. As you can imagine, there's 8 students competing at a time in each competition room, and we have 7 officials in each room. So we need just as many volunteers as students participating. So like I said, we really cannot do this without you. So I just want to thank you very much. And like I said, I'm here if you have any questions. And if I haven't met you previously, I look forward to meeting you at one of our in-person trainings next week, and then seeing you all on the actual competition day. Oh, okay. Go back to your regular work, or hopefully it's 5 o'clock on the East Coast. Hopefully you can all go home. And I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.